This is part 5 of my attempt to create a 1840s period Great Western Railway broad gauge station, and it's based upon the plans provided on the Network Rail Archive, which identifies them as Chippenham Station, Chippenham in Wiltshire. And so this is as far as I've got so far, and I'll come back to this in a moment just to explain how far and what else I've still got to do. But I just want to show you the images that I've got. I've found this one in a book about the broad gauge, which is purportedly Chippenham Station, and you can see it looks nothing at all like the plans which I've been following. And it's also slightly different to the one which was in Meacham's illustrated guide to the Great Western Railway, although we do have this sort of curious, quite narrow sort of some sort of footbridge, something there, which is on the. There is a footbridge, an internal footbridge, but and here it is again, but it looks much greater and it looks more like a roof section. And we've got a ramp down here, and we've got steps at the end here. This is allegedly the goods shed, and it certainly looks like it's got goods wagons there, but I can only see 2 running lines. And on the plans which I've been using, so let's just reduce those, this is the track arrangement. Let's just go down a bit. So this is the track arrangement which I've got, and this is from the, let me see, this will be the London end, so this is the Bristol end, and we've got 1, 2, 1, 2, that's centre one, and that one over there. So this is the down line, that's the up line, or the arrival platform, arrival and departure platform presumably, and then we've got this curious arrangement of having, so I can do that a bit better, of having 2 bays, dead end bays there, pointing towards the Bristol direction. Okay, so what have I done in since I last posted a video? Well, I've done a fair bit. I've added the end screens. Now these are clearly marked on the plans and easy to follow, easy to identify, but I'm beginning to wonder just how close this is to Chippenham Station. This part here, these offices, do look like the listed buildings that exist to this day, and they are tiled. The drawings, you'll recall, had those long sort of leaded sections coming down, which I've not included here. I've still got the chimneys put in, the guttering and that sort of the downpipes. And as I mentioned in my previous video, because of the way in which Trainz operates, all this has to be at the bottom of the platform has to be at ground zero, so I put in steps in front of the doors. But apart from that, everything is exactly as on the plans. What else have I done? Well, we've got the glazing in for the windows, and we've got these 2 long side facades which are then capped off at the end by these screens. And the thing about them is that they give a sort of an enclosed air to the station if we go inside. So this here is the trains would arrive from Paddington here, and they would arrive from Bristol on this platform here. You can only see the edge of it there from this view, and you can see I've got some freestanding columns here that don't seem to do anything. Well, they don't at the moment, but they will do, because between them, in this position here on this bit of the platform and over on this bit of platform over here, then I've still got some more offices of the same type as this in the Bath stone or Cotswold stone to fit in here with flat roofs. And also the if I just go up a bit here, let's go through the roof. This roof in the middle also I've got to adjust. It's not as long as the full length of these others, and I've as you can see, I have done something to this roof now. I've put in all of the glazing and the cross pieces, and the trusses are all in there now. And these trusses, columns and trusses, they are actually two dependencies. There's one set of trusses and columns, and another one which includes those extra ones where the platform level offices in the middle are to go. Now, on the plan which I have, I've got full details of the of what all these offices are for, and so I guess I can put some sort of lettering on them when I eventually get that far. The only issue I've got really with it is that none of this is reflected in those two drawings of Chippenham Station. One of the things that might seem a little bit sort of worrying is the clearance, especially with these internal columns. And so let's just get some broad gauge. There we are. There's Red Star. Let's put Red Star in one of the Star class locos, and a tender. There we are. Oops, too fast. Hold down the shift key so as to slow it down a bit, and you can see there that the clearance is fine, and all the way through. And if we were to look at that particular one of Chippenham, is it that one? This one? No, it's what I'm thinking of is another picture of Slough Station at this time, which had platforms on the same side, arrival and departure platforms, and it had a whole load of these columns as well. And these columns are characteristic of the very early railway stations, especially on the Great Western Railway. And of course, the crew would have to be careful. If you lean out too far, then you're going to become a cropper. You're going to hit your head against one of these columns, and that wasn't unknown. I think it was on the South Eastern Railway or the London, Chatham and Dover. There were a number of incidents, and these eventually of course get replaced as the station gets rebuilt in the next 50 years, because this is just the early point of the development of Chippenham Station, the 1840s. I'm just looking here while I'm talking to you about it, and I can see I've got an issue here compared to here. It's only as you start assembling these, because these are all in different parts of models, they're all different meshes. If we have a quick look in GMAX, here is the roof section in GMAX. So I've got to make sure all of this fits, so that when Trainz assembles it in the sim itself, it all works out okay. Here, look, for example, on the column that repeats all the way down, those cross pieces, those rafters supporting the roof, they're poking through that side there. So I've got to sort something out there. I suspect what I'll be doing is actually extending the roof slightly and moving this side panel along. What else have I done? Well, I've sorted out these the additional columns. I've removed some of the repeating columns from inside at each end. These screens are very much a feature of this station, and indeed they have been of other stations as well, and they illustrate just how different stations were at this time to what we normally expect stations to be from the later Victorian period. So here, for example, we have the rounded ends, not ramps, to the platform, no steps down. That's according to one of the drawings, but also according to the one of the plans. But those plans, I hope they're not leading me up the garden path. So there we are. That's Chippenham Station as she is getting done. In fact, what I'm thinking of doing is calling this a GWR broad gauge station of the 1840s. Perhaps perhaps Chippenham, if the plans at Network Rail Archive are correctly labelled. Let's put a few more, some of the tilt wagons in, just to have a quick look. What we've got there, wooden luggage van. There we are. And actually you can see that the rolling stock, which I made quite some time ago, fits quite well. The height of the platform is slightly greater than the step, but which means it is actually a better way of getting onto the train than using that step. And as far as passenger stock is concerned, let's just see if I can find some passenger stock up here. Got lots of broad gauge bits and bobs, and it's often just finding fast fish, just the right Corsair, broad gauge, those are carriage trucks, Aeolus. Here we are. Well, these are much later. These are from the 1860s and 70s. So if I zoom this up a bit, there we are. There's a first class carriage, 6-wheel first class of 1838. This is one I've made recently, which I haven't released yet, but you'll get the idea how well they fit. And all those steps that do just tuck right next to the station, right next to the platform edge. They don't touch it, they are separate from it, because that is a stepped platform edge. You can just see there. So these were made from, this particular carriage was made from plans from the Broad Gauge Society, one of their data sheets, and this is made from Network Rail's archive, and they fit together, so something must be right. So quite what this station is going to be called, I'm still at a bit of a loss, whether it's going to be called Chippenham or whether it's just going to be called something. I will put in a name board or name boards which can be altered. Unfortunately, it does mean we're stuck with the typeface that Trainz assigns to such things, rather than the much more original typeface. And of course there won't be adverts, because there wasn't that degree of advertising that later stations were smothered in, especially in the late Victorian period. And we've got this forest of columns. But again, as I say, as far as I can see, that's correct. And just fitting them in actually has been quite a bit of fun. So I hope you found this video of interest. I haven't really done any new techniques in Gmax to illustrate how I've been doing this. This video is tending just to reveal how far I've got with Chippenham Station. I don't think there are any more sort of tricks that I'm going to be able to illustrate as I'm making this. But obviously you can see here there are some gaps here and some awkward bits I need to tidy up as I marry this together. And so once I've done those, my next jobs here will be to bring in the fencing that runs along here, sort of Roman style fencing, you'll see what I mean when I made it, and add in the chimneys and maybe some smoke, and bring in these extra offices here, which were a variety of offices of different types, including laboratories, that sort of thing. What I did notice is that no matter how I interpret the plans, there's no way I can stretch this facade right to the end, at each end. It just won't appear, it just doesn't look right. It does show that there are individual columns just standing free there, so I'm going to leave it like that. But it has a vaguely sort of Crystal Palacey air about it, with these end shelter pieces, and of course that's to protect the passengers from the weather, because most of the passengers would have been first class and they expected proper service, they expected to be treated well, they expected to be protected from the elements, they expected to have a crowd of servants around them to pander to all of their requirements, and they expected not only their own personal servants, but they expected the company's servants, that is the employees of the Great Western Railway, to do likewise. So that's why you get this very strange, I found it really quite difficult to handle this station, because it has so many things which are not normal as far as I'm concerned for making a station. It is just different. So there we are, that's part 5, that's how far I've got. I know it's taking quite a time, but I think it's worth the effort, and I hope you've enjoyed this video, seeing how I'm progressing with Chippenham Station. I did swap the track over to the grey ballasted broad gauge track, that's fixed track, and it does now, it is the same, using the same textures as my broad gauge procedural track, which will form its own junctions. And so if we start to add track in here, let's just hold that down so it doesn't, and you begin to get an idea of, let's try and get that clicked on. Didn't go, did it? No. There we are. And then it's because I was holding down the shift key. There we are. So we do have 5 tracks. Now I do have a later track pan from the 1880s for Chippenham, but that's after it had been rebuilt, and the station buildings had changed, become much more what we would regard as conventional. So I don't quite know how to comment on that, because it does mean that the track plan obviously changes as well. There was a good shed, but it wasn't as in the drawing, which I found in one of those books about the broad gauge, which I have. So what I'm thinking of doing is, when I finish this, I will release it just as is, and then it's up to Trainz as if you want to do something a bit different, then you can give this a go. There we are, let's give that a crossover. I think that doesn't look too bad. Anyway, that's just freehand doing the track. And that's going to one of the bays instead of going into one of the bays. But you can see that. And although we've got extra sleepers putting in, I've never been able to solve that problem with my procedural track. But it doesn't look too bad at all, I think. At least it's broad gauge, and at least it's flexible enough. And then here, of course, what we've got is the line coming in from Paddington. There we go. And the line going to Paddington. And then what you can do with this is give it a oh. Okay, thank you. I did that wrong. Told me off. No, okay. I think it's because I got a loco and some rolling stock on there. Anyway, obviously that would be the one that would go there, like that. Just straighten those to get the proper geometry, and obviously they're too close. You've got to give plenty of room for broad gauge. That's what IKB would have done. You can see there that the red there, it's not going to let me move it because there's rolling stock on that line. And then somehow these two tracks came together to form the to continue as the main line. And of course, with broad gauge track, you've got 7-foot gauge track and then a 6-foot in the middle, so it does look a bit weird compared to so-called standard gauge, which in my parlance is narrow gauge, because it's even narrower than the Irish gauge of 5'3". Chippenham Station, part 5. I hope that's been of interest, and you can see all of the sort of wrangling and efforts I've made to try and create something out of those plans, and I hope they'll be successful. So if you'd like to subscribe, please do, to give me a bit of a lift. I know there's people out there who are interested, and also if you have any comments or suggestions or any information about Chippenham. I mean, the roof is largely speculation, but it's speculation based on looking at Slough and some of the Bourne illustrations to give me the idea. I think they would have kept it quite light. They would have wanted it glazed. So So could be quite a model. And I'm thinking that when I do release this, it might make a nice centerpiece for a relatively short layout, in which you could wouldn't need to put in a heck of amount of surrounding scenery, just enough to give the impression of an 1840s town, and bring the track in, and then maybe put some portals at each end, a couple of mile or so away, a couple of miles away, and then just run it as a broad gauge layout. Right, well that's it for this part, and look out for the next.